Welcome to On the Line. I'm Christine Williams. Coming up, the effects of divorce on children and how to manage it. Stay tuned. We all know that divorce has an impact on children. The degree of that impact depends largely on the conflict level of the parents. The age of the child is another important variable. The issue is complex, and our goal is to shed some light and equip you with the necessary knowledge and information. Children are our future. We need to be mindful of them. Our guest is a high-profile social worker, often seen in the media, Gary Dierenfeld. He is also regarded by the courts as an expert witness. If you're struggling with your youngster's behavior problems and you think your separation or divorce may be an issue, give us a call for advice. Our lines are open. Gary, thank you for joining me today.
Always good to be here.
Great. You know, today is really timely for two reasons. You were telling me that January is
divorce month. This
Amazing.
is the month when more parents are going to contemplate divorce over any other month.
Reason for this?
Christmas is over. A lot of folks were saying, well, let's hold it together for the sake of the kids. Let's get through Christmas. All right, they've gotten through Christmas, and you know what? The bills are coming in. It's adding another layer of stress, and it's reminding them about the marriage.
Wow. Another reason this is so timely is because on our last show, we talked about that horrific situation at Toronto schools where violence is basically out of control. There's a culture of fear, and sadly enough, it's not just Toronto schools. I mean, maybe they're more out there, more tragic incidents. But a lot of schools are facing this today. And yes, we don't want to say, well, it's all because of you parents that are having a divorce out there, but we do know that children are impacted by their environment, by what goes on in the home. You've done this, Gary, for a lot of years. You've been in the court system, regarded as an expert witness. Can you give us an overview how this is impacting children, specifically divorce?
Well, you have to appreciate that children get their sense of safety and security from their mommy and daddy. Okay? Their mommy and daddy provide for everything. Here you are, this newborn child. You can't go to the store. You can't go to the fridge even. You can't even toilet yourself. And so you're dependent upon your parents. This 2-year-old has to be kept safe from harm. This 5-year-old has to get off to the first day of school. Things occur over the life of this child. This 14, 15-year-old is looking to have that relationship with either mother or father. You know, same-sex relationships with our parents are very important, particularly at that age. Enter divorce. Even in a low-conflict divorce, parents tend to be disheveled. I mean, oh my God, my life is turned upside down. And as our lives are turned upside down, what happens to that support, safety, security, nurturance, guidance, relationship that we're supposed to be providing our children? So at the very least, the bare minimum, we are distracted at this time with respect to the care of our kids. Bare minimum. Now let's add insult to injury. Mom and dad really don't like each other. Mom and dad start to trash each other. Child is privy to that. Child says, well, wait a minute. If dad is bad or if mom is dad, I look up to them. I'm genetically linked. I'm half daddy, I'm half mommy. If both of them are bad, what does that say about me? Because I draw my sense of value and worth by thinking they're worthy.
Now, this is going on the unconscious level, evidently, from what you're saying.
Yes.
Because you're looking at very young children here as well.
All ages.
Babies. That's what I find interesting.
This even affects babies. You know, if the parent is distracted in the care of the child, maybe this is a child who is not as attended to as quickly as might be the parent, the child of the parent who is not distracted. You know, this is the bare minimum. Okay? Children, generally from about ages 4 to 10 to 12, subject to their parents' divorce, they have a kind of magical thinking. They look at this conflict between the parents and they think one of two things. First is, how did I cause this? is this my fault?
So this is something that you see across the board, because I know that this has come up in the
It is
media,
so-
even in movies.
so-
How did I cause this? So it's
So
true,
common,
according to what
yes.
you're saying.
And then second to that, again, we even have a movie based on this, The Parent Trap, where these,
Yes.
twin girls realize their parents were divorced or separated, try to get the parents together. So children of these ages also seek to repair their parents' relationship. And sometimes it's, again, with the magical thinking. If I concentrate, if I am better behaved, if I intervene with them directly, maybe I can save their marriage. Christine, children cannot be responsible for the well-being of their parents. Doesn't happen. And so as that inevitably fails, then the child internalizes, I'm worthless again, because I can't even save those whom I love, my own parents. So divorce can have phenomenal impacts on the children. And then there's the whole issue of, how do children learn of their parents' divorce? Mm-hmm. Is it in the fit of a violence? Is it in the fit of a terrible argument where one parent storms out the door, never to return? Will the child be sat down by their parents and have it explained reasonably by both parents, where parents take responsibility, say that the matter is between them, it wasn't an issue related to the child. So all these things as well have a bearing on how the child interprets, makes sense of, and goes forward from that situation.
Now, you've seen, unfortunately, the worst case scenarios in court.
Yes, I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are the few that really stick out in your mind? Of course, I'm not asking for specifics here. There's a confidence issue, but...
In general terms, first of all, we differentiate between low, moderate, and high conflict divorces. In a low conflict divorce, the parents say, you know what, we don't love each other, we don't get along, we don't beat each other up, we don't talk badly between ourselves, but we know that we're not made for each other. Let's separate. And they do so on what others will refer to as an amicable basis. Moderate conflict divorce, whenever they try to separate on that amicable basis, they wind up arguing between themselves. And so they really can't resolve matters because they're dragging in, you said this, he said that, your mother said that, yeah, but your brother said this. And so they need an intervener, hopefully just a mediator, to help them settle things between themselves. High conflict divorce.
Wow, the worst ones.
I want what I want, I want what I want, never the twain shall meet.
And I don't care what happens to the kids?
Hey, I'm going to be self-righteous. I think what I want is what's best for the kids. No, I think what I want. And these are very different things. So damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead. My lawyer can beat up your lawyer. These matters are now before the courts. The judges are expert at law. They're not necessarily experts in parent-child relationships, child development, and the like. Mm-hmm. So they call in persons like myself, social workers and psychologists, to provide assessments. And this assessment is to figure out, looking at these parents as resources, what are their strengths and weaknesses? What are the needs of the child? How do we meet the needs of the child in view of what's available from these parents by virtue of their strengths and weaknesses? Let me tell you, during these assessments, parents think that they have to convince me as to the righteousness of their position. I'm not choosing a side here. I'm making a recommendation pulling from the strengths and weaknesses of a parent. So what I have to recommend may not reflect what either parent wants. And so parents have to realize by the time they've gone to court, they're actually abdicating control of their situation to the will of the court, which will be greatly influenced by the recommendations of the assessor.
Wow. Gary, we're going to have to go for a break now. Today we're talking about the effects of divorce on children. You may be watching. We're not here to condemn anybody. We're here to shed light on a reality. If you have any questions, you want advice, give us a call. Gary is a top-notch social worker, highly profiled in the media, and he's also involved in his own show, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that as well. We're going to go for a break. We'll be back after this. Stay tuned. Hello again and welcome back to our conversation. We're talking about the effects of divorce on children. Gary Dierenfeld is joining me, a well-known social worker, also an expert witness in court. We're not only highlighting the effects of divorce on children at the various levels, we're also opening up our lines. They're open now to give you advice. If you need any advice whatsoever, you may be noticing behavioral changes in your children. Well, call in. Gary will give you that advice. Now, Gary, you have your own show as well. Tell us about that one.
This is a hoot. It's called Newlywed Nearly Dead.
My goodness.
Yeah. And
Capturing name.
So I'm kind of like the super nanny for newlyweds.
Wow.
So a lot of viewers are familiar with that show, Super Nanny. You see a family in distress, can't manage the behavior of the children. In parachutes, the super nanny sorts things out, and voila, things improve. So I do something similar with Newlywed Nearly Dead. Newlywed couples where the wheels are wobbly on the bus. They're in trouble, they give me a call, I view some tape as to their respective behaviors, I parachute in, offer them some direction, give them some challenges, do this for the next week, I check in on them, and more often than not, things improve.
Wow, well thank God for that. It can be really challenging for newlyweds, I tell you.
Absolutely.
We're all there who married.
Yeah. The whole issue is one of adjustment, so it's a hoot.
Now, going back to the children of divorce, and that itself is such a difficult adjustment for children, I'm very curious about the different ages. And I'm not going to start from the youngest going up. I'm going to start from the oldest, actually, when you're looking at the teenage years. Because from what I understand about teenagers, and this is common knowledge, they're going through a lot of changes in their life, trying to come to terms with who they are, what they're going to make out of life. And here they may be faced with their parents going through a divorce. How is that impacting them, Gary?
Well, one of the bigger issues for teens whose parents are divorcing or have divorced is the availability of the parents to them. Okay? So if it's a, in process kind of thing, these parents may be emotionally disheveled, there may be, hot conversations back and forth. The teen is subject to that. They want to do this, like, please spare me.
Yes.
And they may feel like they have to take sides, and they may or may not, or they may want to get the heck out of Dodge, so to speak.
Yes.
And so parents start to lose their influence, their sway, their relationship with these teenagers. As they lose their sway, their influence, the influence of the peers take over.
Wow.
So now you have an upset kid whose parents are less available to them, and now the kid may be turning more to the community, more to their peers. And I gotta tell you, no teenager is likely gonna offer as sound a set of guidance as advice as hopefully one's parents would. Mm-hmm. So that's where teens can get into trouble. Parents less available, peers more available. Who knows where they're going to go?
But is this true to say, or perhaps even fair to say, that like has a tendency to attract like? You may have a teenager going to school facing turbulence in the house, so what they do is that they end up befriending other teens who are going through turbulence in the house. So it ends up in a good way being a support group, but at the same time the poisons are being exchanged.
Let's switch seats, because seriously, that was a great analysis. So it's like supporting like, and I like what you just said. I'm going to use that in an article.
Oh, good.
They trade poisons? Is that how you said it?
Yep, poisons are being exchanged.
Poisons are being exchanged. And so this can lead them off into bad things. So we get I've seen teens who wind up cutting themselves.
That's a trend today. And you know what, I'm going to stop you for a while.
Yeah.
Just for a while here, we have to go back to what we were discussing overall. But from what I'm understanding, and I'm seeing some very troubling reports, CNN ran one even over a year ago, about this new trend of teens cutting themselves, and it's becoming virtually fashionable.
Yeah.
Why is this?
I don't know about it being a new trend. I have seen this throughout my 25, 26 years of practice.
Well, that's good to know. So you're not seeing it any more today than you've seen it?
I'm not. What I think may be happening is we have a greater awareness of it. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the media will make us more aware of an issue. It doesn't mean the issue is happening more. And so what's happening for some of these teens, they're looking for a way of venting their upset, their distress, They cannot do it verbally. They don't have any other supports. And the act of this cutting seems to bring this psychological relief, even though it is so misplaced, so unhealthy. So we see that in some kids. The other kids may get into, well, think about school. Think about you and me. If I have a bad day, I just don't concentrate the same at work. That makes us normal. Now we look at our teenagers or our younger children. They have a bad day. Their parents are duking it out. The kid doesn't know where they're going to be living next. How do they concentrate at school? A good friend and colleague of mine, Paul Ricketts, he coined a term for me, attention divided by divorce, ADD.
Wow.
So it's not ADD as in the classical sense, there's a neurological condition. It's how do I concentrate at school, worried about what's going on at home.
Some of these kids are being identified as ADD when it may be the situation as opposed to a
attention divided
neurological.
by divorce.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, the intervention of choice is not Ritalin or Concerta, these medications typically for ADD. The intervention of choice is working with these parents to sort out the conflict and the parenting plan. How are you going to manage these kids between you on an ongoing basis such that the kid will still get the structure, the routine, and the caring that they require of both parents?
Now, looking at the pain of the parents, and I don't want this to fall through the cracks today, a lot of them are going through extreme pain themselves. Many of them have perhaps all of them, everybody has a history. And you can't help but wonder how much of their own history comes back to haunt them, or perhaps even what they're going through with the mere divorce itself, so that they're at that point perhaps feeling incapable of being a parent. They're barely holding it up. They're barely even going to work every morning to hold down a job.
It's tough. When we get married, we say, "Till death do us part." That is such a common wedding vow. And even if it isn't written into your vows, it's ingrained in our collective consciousness that that's what marriage is about. And even though the divorce rate is as high as it is, when a parent is subject to divorce, they feel like a failure. They're upset by this, typically. Because it contradicts the sentiment, "Till death do us part." And at the very least, they have to deal with what contributed to the demise of this marriage, what was my contribution, what was my spouse's contribution, what can I learn from this, what can I do differently for future relationships, because if I did have a contribution, I certainly don't want to recreate that in my next relationship. Okay? So there is so much for them to contend with. With respect to the children, so many of these parents worry about, will I still have a relationship with my kids? And behind the custody and access dispute, that's often what's underneath it. And maybe I wasn't available as the mom or as the dad, but now this has slapped me in the face, and I want to be available on an ongoing basis. Well, just because a person wasn't available in the past doesn't mean that can't be changed, and they can't be available in the future.
That's a positive point. It's never too late. We're going to have to return to some of this. Now, before we go for a break, let's go now to Marie on line 6. Hello, Marie. You're on the line.
Hello. I have a question. I'm a 40-year-old child from a divorce, and I still have a lot of issues in dealing with it, and I'm just wondering what you would suggest.
Wow, Marie, what you're asking there, I think, may be deeper than perhaps I'm imagining now. We're not going to answer it yet because we must go for that break. We'll return to you, so hang on there after this break. Stay tuned. Hello again and welcome back to our conversation. We're talking about the effects of divorce on children. Our lines are open. We want you to call in if you have any questions. Gary Dierenfeld is joining us, a well-known social worker, and Marie is on the line. Marie asked a very interesting question. She's saying that she's 40 years old, came from a broken home, and she's quite concerned, or perhaps wants to know how she can be affected today with products of our past.
I took it a little different. She's saying, I am affected.
She is affected, definitely.
I am affected today. I'm a 40-year-old woman. My parents divorced when I was but a child, yet it still affects me. And she said, you know, what should I do? First of all, the quick and easy answer is, Marie, find a counselor who is familiar with separation and divorce issues, not a general counselor. Okay, this is a specialty. Find somebody who's familiar with divorce and separation issues and chat it out with them. Having said that, the message to parents today is the effects of divorce has long legs. So you may think, oh, this is only an issue in the here and now for my child, but no, it is an issue for the entirety of their life because this is their formative experience. Okay? Further, you know, a parent whose children, or children whose parents divorce when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, and yet it's an acrimonious divorce. There is conflict. Think of what this child has to look forward to. What does Christmas mean in the life of this child when every Christmas means a dispute between the parents as to when pickup is on Christmas Day? What does confirmation mean to this child? Can both parents attend the confirmation? Think of being walked down the aisle by your separated and divorced parents. For some children, they fear that the parents are going to kill themselves before they get to the altar. So divorce has long legs. This can have disastrous implications for children. And yet, this is the role model of marital life now for your kids.
Ironically, much of what's happening today, you wonder how many of these parents that are going through a bitter divorce also went through that when they were children.
And the research tells us that even in a so-called amicable divorce, children whose parents are divorced are at a higher risk that they will have marital failures too, for no other reason but that divorce is now a possibility in their thinking. Interesting.
What about younger kids? Now, you mentioned about teenagers. We talked about them being at a point in life where they have to make major decisions, and this, of course, impacts perhaps their identity. When a child is younger, children show things differently. From what I understand, the process of divorce is one of grief. Well, can you take us through this, Gary?
Before I get to the grief, let me just give you a developmental perspective here. Children grow morally, okay, as they develop, and their view of what's moral, what's appropriate, changes over time. So to the young child, 5, 6, 7, they see one parent crying, greatly affected by the divorce, and they say, oh my God, this parent is crying, this parent is therefore hurt, the other parent's the bad guy. Okay? They cut the world into right and wrong, and they choose sides accordingly. And so one parent may say, well, why isn't my child getting along with me? You've been painted with the brush that says bad guy or bad gal. Okay? Then we move on to the 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old, and these children morally are more able to rationalize and go underneath the situation. So they may say, well, you may be the one who's crying, but if you didn't have that affair, you wouldn't have put yourself in this situation. And so, you know, depending on their moral development, they may then understand and interpret the parent's behavior differently than would that younger child. Now let's look in a family that has the 13-year-old and the 8-year-old. 8-year-old interprets one way, 13-year-old interprets totally different way because of the changes in moral development. Now these siblings are in conflict, and they're choosing to live with different parents.
Wow.
There is so much that goes on, Christine, in terms of family dynamics that most parents have no idea of what's underneath. That's why they come to experts to sort this out.
Do you see a lot of families where siblings choose a different parent?
Yes.
Wow, more now? Or
Yeah,
is this something
well, I
wow.
don't know that's necessarily more now, but I've seen this all throughout my career. Sometimes it is based on gender. Other times it's based on age and,
So you
this
would
moral
find
point of view.
For gender, you would find typically, and again, we can't say it's always the case, but you would find that perhaps the boy wants to stay with dad, the girl wants to stay with
That
mom.
tends to be more common, you know, in terms of gender preferences. Yes. Yeah. But all this stuff has to be sorted out. There's one question that I cannot stand, and that is, at what age can my child choose who they shall live with? And I look at parents, I say, you know, don't ever put that upon your child. How can they choose between one parent and another? This is always a parental decision. And if you're putting the child in the position of choosing, this child then has to say, whose parent do I not want to love me? That's how it gets interpreted. It's a terrible thing to put on one child. And parents who position their children for that, at times they're trying to buy their child's affection so that, pick me, you know, less rules at my house, more gifts at my house, more freedoms. You know, we don't, you know, yes, we will listen to a child's preference, giving it more weight as they age. But as the social worker, we go underneath what is influencing that child's decision. And just because a child states a preference doesn't mean it is in that child's interest. How many children tell you, but I want the cookie. I'd rather have chocolate for dinner every day. We don't let children make these decisions.
They would choose the chocolate over the broccoli any day. But
Well, yeah.
what do you do in those situations? How do parents sort this out? What's in the best interest of the child?
That's where the social worker, the psychologist, the clinical expert has to provide a lot of education, information, guidance, feedback to the parent to help them understand what is underneath, what's going on, and how to truly make a more informed decision with respect to the well-being of their children.
The area we really need to cover, and I've heard this before many times, the one parent that perhaps has more money, they buy off the kids. So obviously,
yeah.
particularly if it's the parent that gets to see the child on the weekends or every second weekend.
Yeah, uncle parent or auntie parent.
Precisely. They're not the ones that are faced with the constant discipline. So obviously the child, and you see this happening, they go back home.
They go back home. Thinking.
Exactly. They go back home to the parent that is more responsible for the discipline, and they say, oh, but daddy or whoever the parent is got this for me, does this for me, and you never do this for me. I mean, huge issue.
That's where we get into what I call as-if parenting.
As if parenting. Hold on to that concept, Gary. Once again, our lines are open for you to call in. We'll be back after this. Stay tuned. Hello again, and welcome back to our discussion, the effects of divorce on children. Let's go now to you, John, on line 6. Hello, John, you're on the line.
Good afternoon, dear.
Good afternoon, John.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that the family, we're not looking at a main problem here with the family, right? There is two person get married. They don't have any knowledge. Only they giving I love you, you love me. Okay, from the beginning, root of the cause you got to find out, to solve the problem from the beginning. Now, after some time, the woman says that their wife is working, the man is working somewhere else. They want to have a good time with the child even though. So the time passed by, the kid, if they have a child there, now the wife is always has to work outside and inside, and she gets frustrated. When the frustration come down there, then other problem is created with it. And now the woman gets separated from the husband, and she goes away, and she lives as a single mother, and stays single, and the father goes somewhere else.
You're referring to one particular case scenario, is that right? One particular picture.
Yeah.
Is there a specific question you want to ask about that, John? I hear the picture. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I get the picture. But is there a specific question you want to ask about this?
Yeah, specific question. I would like to know how you people going to solve this problem. It's impossible to solve the problem, okay?
Well, I'm going to cue into something John said, and that is couples are getting married with no experience in marriage. Okay?
Yes.
And
So true.
Typically we like to get our experience at the feet of our own parents. Yeah? And so that is the learning ground. Unfortunately, for many persons, that wasn't a good learning ground.
Bad training for many.
And this might sound trite, but sometimes when I'm counseling couples who don't have decent role models, believe it or not, I tell them to watch The Cosby Show. Dr. Huxtable and Claire Huxtable. And I say, you know what? Look at how they get along in that show. Look at how they treat each other respectfully. Look at how there's no demeaning. Look at how that when they conspire, they're conspiring to have fun or to do something good for one another. There is so much to be learned in terms of a respectful relationship from that show. I'm also a proponent of marriage prep classes.
Oh, definitely.
Because
huge.
it teaches young persons to have certain discussions before tying the knot. Let's make sure we're on the same page financially, socially.
Goals, even from what John's saying. The woman decides to work and...
Do we want children and the like? And, hopefully these kinds of things can better inoculate young couples.
Is it possible for a situation the way John is describing? Now, I don't know if it's your particular situation, it seems that way, but that's not the issue here. Is it possible that a marriage like this, where they come together, and we're not pointing fingers, they obviously have different dreams, different goals, in the scenario where perhaps, and I've heard this, perhaps you have the guy and he's considered often chauvinistic by a lot of members in society who doesn't want his wife to go to work once the children are here. To me, the time to discuss that is before the marriage, to find out what your goals are. Because nothing is wrong with a woman staying at home with the kids, but at the same time, if a woman decides from before she doesn't want to, these are issues that need discussing. Is there any possible way?
Sorting out prior
Is there a
to
balance,
marriage.
though? Could that be worked out once the knot is tied and the woman says, yes, she's at work, she's frustrated? Because is it not a case of compromise there between both?
And there we are. So I do see a lot of newlywed couples, not just on television, my show, but in my counseling practice as well. And it's helping them to renegotiate the terms of their relationship and helping them to understand what it means to grow, what it means to be individual in the context of being a couple. In this relationship. And for many, it's a struggle. And I certainly invite them to struggle. There's also some research that says if you have marital conflict today, and we look at all these couples, in 5 years' time, the greater proportion of those couples have gotten over the hump and now have happy marriages.
But it needs negotiation, though, Gary. Like, I'm thinking about that same case scenario because I know of situations like this where the guy would say, and I'm not blaming guys here, I'm genuinely asking Gary. He's the guy, he's seen it all, trust me. The guy comes and says, well, look, you're frustrated because you are a woman and you should have stayed home, and now the kid is basically a latchkey kid because of you. You decided to go to work, and I have no part of that. It's your fault. Now, from where I'm sitting, and I know I'm a woman, I chose to stay home with the kids when they were young, but that's my business. It's a person's choice. But something strikes me as a bit unhealthy there. Should, and I'm asking you this, the man step up to the challenge at that point and say, look, she's working, I'm working. How can we come together to make this work instead of, well, you're working, it's your fault, I have nothing to do with this. I go to work, I'm a man, I should go to work. How do you deal with these?
Right. So we have to talk about where do some of your attitudes and values come from? How are they, cop a line from Dr. Phil, how's that working for you? Right?
In many cases, it's not.
Well, exactly. So helping people learn what it means to be flexible. Helping people learn what it means to change one's attitude, values, and belief, to accommodate one another. And this is what it takes to make any marriage work on any issue. If you do not learn how to accommodate, which is different from the word compromise. As soon as you tell somebody to compromise, they think that they got to give something up. In accommodating, we're not giving something up. We're attuning ourselves to one another's needs. And what we both get from that is peace in the relationship, a better marriage as a result. When we think of the tit for tat that goes on for marriages, if I hurt you, you hurt me. But if I accommodate and I support you, what's likely to happen? You'll reciprocate. It'll be a nice tit for tat. You will support and accommodate to me as well, too. And that's what we strive to achieve in a well-balanced, more healthy marriage.
Well said. Now we're going to have to go for a break. Now I know it sounds like we deviated a little bit talking about the relationship, but it is about the relationship when it comes to the kids as well, because the scenario that we presented, Gary, you can hear the child just...
This is how we teach our kids to get along.
Precisely. Crucial point. We're teaching our children how to get along every day by our actions. We're going to go for a break now. We'll return and to you on the phone lines after this. Stay tuned. Hello again. Welcome back to our program. We're talking about the effects of divorce on children, and Gary Dyrenfeld, a social worker, is joining me. Lots more to talk about, but let's go to George on line 8. Hello, George. You're on the line.
Hi. My biggest question is, as a Christian father, okay, the daughters have been gone from the house for 2 years now, and as a Christian father, how do I tell them or ask them to follow my footstep in coming to church and following my faith?
Great question. Great question.
How old?
17 and 19.
Okay, that's important, yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, first of all, let's pretend this is an intact family, not separated parents. You're talking about a 17, 18, 19-year-old children. Good luck at the best of times. Many kids start what I call voting with their feet. So if they don't want to do what the parents are doing, they tend not to do it. That's part of being that age. And so it wouldn't matter separated or intact family. Now, having said that, for me, the bigger issue is, how do you still hold influence? How do you still hold sway with your children for their moral development when you are separated? The best thing you can be doing, George, is leading a moral life. You are forever the role model, the example.
Ouch.
So it's
a
not
lot of
how
people are
you
going to feel that advice.
It's not how you badger them. It's how they see you make choices in your life. It's how they feel you, even in view of a contradictory decision on their part, that you still love them, you still honor your kids, and you still support your children. That way, you live your Christianity. You live your value system. And that's what you exude to your children. So that when your children get a little older, a little wiser, they can say, you know what? My dad, he was a great man. And underneath it, he had these values. And you know what? Now that I'm a little wiser, I want to do things to ascribe to those values too.
Wow.
That's the answer.
You know, a lot of people are going to feel the pressure of a bit of guilt when it comes to this kind of advice, which is 100% correct in my view. We're all role models for our children, but I'll tell you a quick story, very short, that I heard on the radio once, an example that was given of an upstanding man with a strong faith, and he was describing his experience that he had one evening when he was looking at pornography in the evening, and he felt guilty because he knew it was something against his faith, it was against his whole belief system, but he kept looking at it. And he talks about this sense of guilt, and so strong that even there's a presence behind him that he's feeling, and he wondered whether it's the guilt. Then he turns around, and his 8-year-old son was standing right behind him and saw this. Now, for him, this ended up a positive case from the testimonial of the fellow, saying that, you know what, that changed my life, he said, because it ended up being, how do I live with myself? How do I even explain to my child after such a demonstration? But there are people out there, and I'm not pointing fingers. They're having affairs. They're living this life, that life. The kids know it's happening. The impact on the children here is huge, Gary.
You're right, and I wrote a recent article. I posted it to my website this morning, as a matter of fact. Kids are always listening, they're always hearing, and they are privy to all that goes on. So much of the time, parents think that they're keeping these matters hidden. And while the child may not have all the facts straight, they can smell when something is going on. And so if you want to lead a moral life, or if you want your children to lead a moral life, for goodness sakes, so better had you, because that's where it starts.
Suppose, we're going to have to go for a break again. Suppose you're a mom. And it could happen in reverse as well. So I'm just using stereotypes here. They tend to be most frequently reported. Suppose you're a mom and you're deciding to live an upstanding life, and you're proving it, but it's visitation time. It's time to go off to daddy's house, or you're a dad and time to go off to mommy's house, and the person that you're sending your child to, they're having any moral, they're completely opposite to your own. Do you have any rights in court at all based on that? We're going to return after this. Stay tuned. Hello again and welcome back to our conversation, the effects of divorce on children. Gary Dierenfeld is joining me. Gary, with the little time we have left, we could have talked on for another hour. The scenario of rights here.
Yeah. So, even when one parent has so-called custody, the other has access. One's custodial rights do not supersede one's access rights. In other words, just because I'm responsible more so for this child doesn't mean I can withhold this child from seeing the other parent.
No matter what the parent is like in terms of values.
Correct. Unless this child is actually being abused by that other parent. I mean, there are some lines in the sand.
Of course.
But if it's, this other parent's a scoundrel, but the child isn't being abused per se, and we can, forever discuss what the meaning of abuse, but that parent cannot withhold that child. As if parenting means you parent with respect to what goes on in your home and your home only. You cannot control what happens in the other parent's home, so you be the best parent you can on the ground in your domicile. Okay? If you continue to get caught up with what goes on in the other parent's home, you lose track of parenting here. The kid is caught in the middle of a conflict. Things are actually worse, as if parenting. Dispute resolution. So let's say, while I can't control what goes on in that other person's home, maybe I still, want to address it. Meet with a social worker. You have to invite that other parent to go with you. Other parent doesn't want to go. Meet with a mediator. Other parent doesn't want to go. Speak to your lawyer. There's a concept in family law now known as collaborative family law. And so this is not to return matters to court, but this is to sit down with two lawyers and the mom and the dad to help you more rationally discuss what is going on in a safer context where hopefully you can negotiate an agreement. Collaborative family law is a relatively new movement. Rather than going to court, we say, okay, we need to keep our rights in check. We need to follow a process to come to some agreement. We need to make sure we're protected here. That's what the lawyers will do. But rather than being a part of the court, you do this on your own schedule in four-way meetings. Let's say they need the help of an expert. Rather than both parents getting their own experts and now they're duking it out, you agree on the single expert. And so that person acts as a consultant. It could be someone like myself from the social work perspective. It could be a financial person to help sort out the finances. So I certainly invite parents these days that if they think they need a lawyer, find those who practice collaborative family law.
Wow, so much to discuss. Arlene on line 6. Arlene, you're on the line.
Yes, good afternoon. I have a member of our family that is going through divorce and has three children between 12 and 20. The daughter, being the youngest, is just bouncing between her mom and dad's place, wherever she can get the most freedom. The dad really doesn't...
Arlene, can you get to the bottom line quickly because we're running out of time?
The dad really isn't there for her, but every time she gets upset at her mother, she runs to her dad's home. Now, she's just sliding in between and goes to school. If she doesn't want to go to school, she won't go.
Wow, so sad.
And
typical.
so these are situations that scream for counseling. Because here is a kid whose parents obviously don't communicate, and the kid is manipulating the situation in a sense to get out of doing what she has to do, which is go to school. So you have a kid who's not being monitored, not being supervised, not being provided appropriate guidance, and parents who ain't chatting it up. You got to get these parents into the same room so that they can have a better appreciation, understanding of the conflict, how it's affecting their daughter, and how that they're not there to be their daughter's friend, they still have to be the daughter's parents.
Crucial.
Yeah.
So no matter what, because there's so much more to discuss today, we're just heating up, is it fair to conclude that if you're a parent, a single parent, be the best you can be, Don't focus too much on what's going on in the other house. Try to provide a stable environment without continuously pointing fingers at the other household.
Yes, and don't use your children as emissaries going back and forth. Hey, if that happened at that parent's house, but you're here with me now today, let's go do our whatever. You, the parent, have to make a conscious decision to get your child out from the middle.
Wow. Are you seeing it having health effects on children as well?
When they're not doing that, it certainly does affect the children. They're not concentrating at school. They may have tummy aches, headaches. They may feel responsible for the parent's well-being. They may have trouble concentrating at school. Yeah, so
Wow.
we want to spare the kids the fallout from divorce.
Wow, what a wonderful way to end it, Gary. Wonderful advice. Please heed that. Gary, thank you so much for
So
such
good to be here
insight.
again.
Yes, it is. Always is.
Yeah.
Thanks. And that's all the time we have for today. See you again next time. I'm Christine Williams, and from all of us, thank you for watching.